Hello friends, this is Grease speaking. Well, you guys kept on asking for it, so here it is. Everything is Fine, Season 4 Explained. Part 1. One of the most common comments I get is, when are you going to do more Everything is Fine? Well, here's the deal. Season 4 isn't even finished yet. So at your suggestion, I decided to cover it in parts. Today I'll be covering the first 15 episodes, and when the next 15 are available and free, I'll make another video. I have to say, this season is absolutely bonkers in that perfect Everything is Fine kind of way. I could have never predicted the direction it would go, and that's not a complaint. I'm constantly surprised at how this series manages to keep things mysterious while still introducing new information. Don't worry, there are some big reveals here. There's also more questions, but we'll take what we can get. If you're a fan of Everything is Fine, then you can support the creator, Mike Burchell, by joining his Patreon. He's actually been doing a director's commentary on every episode so far, so if you want some behind the scenes on the series, go check that out. If for some reason you missed my other Everything is Fine videos, I'll link a playlist below so you can catch up. But otherwise, let's get into it. This is Season 4 of Everything is Fine Explained, Part 1. Episode 91, Fermi's Pet Project. Season 4 opens with some mysterious and bizarre images as well as a cryptic story. We see a field of flowers that kind of look like sunflowers but somewhat shaped like cat heads. A hand reaches out and scrapes some red jelly off of the top of one of the flowers. At the same time, a story is being told of a very old man and a very old woman who lived in a house surrounded by flowers. The very old woman asked her husband for a cat. Next, we see a frog that's face is very cat-like. It's captured and squeezed until it pukes up its green guts onto a large leaf, which is already coated in the red flower jelly. The mysterious person then rolls a sharp stick up in the leaf, seemingly making a poison dart. It's also worth noting that the hand we've seen almost looks furry, which is kinda odd. In the story, the old man went out to find a cat for the old woman and eventually came upon a hill that was covered in cats. While the story being told doesn't seem to match what we're seeing, it does somewhat reflect it to a degree, because next we see a lion and her cubs snuggled up in a cave on the side of a hill. The lion cub opens its eyes in fright, followed by its mother, who lets out a scary roar, but she's immediately hit with the poison dart and is knocked out. In the story, the old man finds billions and trillions of cats on the hill, and given that there's so many, they have a hard time deciding which one to keep. They ask the cats which one of them is the prettiest, and all of the cats speak up, claiming that they are. Then we see the lion's eye wide open with flames reflected in it, and it zooms out to show the animal's head cut off and being drained of blood into a basin. Next is a pretty eerie image of a figure in some kind of tribal outfit that has cat ears. They're standing on a plateau with the blood while a bonfire rages below and a massive crowd of people surround it. On a closer look, these tribe members are all wearing flat cat masks with various red markings on them. Even weirder, looking at the back of one of their heads, we can see that these beings seem to have actual cat ears and fur. The story continues being told with the trillions of cats arguing with each other over who the prettiest one is until they've all eaten each other up. In the end, only one cat remained. The old man asked the kitten how they were not eaten, and the kitten replied that they think of themselves as an ugly cat, so they didn't speak up. The old man brought the kitten home to the old woman, and they cleaned the kitten to find that it was a pretty cat indeed. In fact, the old man had seen trillions of cats, and this was by far the prettiest. We then see the tribe leader, or whoever this is, soak his hand in the lion's blood while speaking in some unidentifiable language. He then puts a bloody paw print on the mountain behind him and circles it with a black substance until it resembles the red pupil of an eye. The tribe leader raises his hands, and in the flames below, we see the words, "Everything is Fine, Part 4. How to Eat a Sun." If you think this was cryptic and confusing, let it be an indicator for the rest of the season, because despite all the things we've learned so far in this comic, it drops us right back into a sea of surprises and more questions. Also, it's worth noting that the story being told is actually excerpts from a 1928 children's book called Millions of Cats by Wanda Gog. I also want to point out that if you look at the necklaces the tribesmen are wearing, they are made up of modern objects like a binky, a set of keys, and a wallet. So this seems seems to be taking place in somewhat modern times. How it relates to the rest of this comic, I have no idea. Anyway, it then cuts back to Maggie in the future apologizing to Sam and wishing she had never left him, adding that things are so much worse out there than they imagined. She doesn't even know where to begin. She says that they thought they found the enemy base, but they were actually being watched the whole time. Before she says any more, Sarah gives her a big hug, and Maggie breaks down in tears, finally seeing her daughter after all this time. They say they love each other and that they'll never leave each other again. Sam's not as enthusiastic at Maggie's return and just tells Sarah that he's taking her baby, Margaret, back home. Maggie questions the name and Sam says that she's named after her dead grandma, who should have stayed that way. Damn, that's harsh. Sarah insists that Maggie come to her house and meet the baby as well as someone else, and the episode ends with a look at a new character with a purple cat head. Episode 92, Pinpoint the Second. In Sarah's house, Maggie finds a picture of Sarah's wedding day. In the photo, standing by Maggie is the purple-headed cat, presumably her husband, and some kid. On her other side is Sam, who's holding hands with a gentleman. We actually have seen him once before in the last season and learned that this was Sam's new boyfriend, Oliver. Sarah pulls Maggie into the other room to meet her husband Daniel, and he's overjoyed to meet her. He says that he would do anything to protect Sarah, die for her, or even kill for her, and extends that protection to Maggie since they're family now. He then calls her a celebrity and asks if she really was the youngest chef to win the prestigious Jacques Moustache Award. Remember, Maggie was a world-class chef before everything went to hell. She's a little standoffish towards Daniel and says, "So you're the guy who got my daughter pregnant?" Daniel awkwardly replies yes, and Sarah yells at her, so she tries to play nice. We learn that Daniel is actually the town's sheriff and says that they don't have a mayor, so most civil matters fall to him and his deputies. He says that if Maggie ever has a problem with anyone around here, just let him know and he'll take care of it. I don't know, guys. I'm already a little suspicious of Daniel, and let's be real, cops do not have a good standing in this comic so far. Anyway, he leaves to grab some food, and Maggie asks Sarah how they met. She says it was actually in the rooftop camps. Maggie then asks her something more serious. Was it really her choice? Did Daniel force her to get married? Sarah seems a little offended by the question and says of course not. She really loves him, and after they met, all she wanted to do was marry him. So they did as soon as she turned 18. Maggie then asks about her granddaughter, Margaret. Did Sarah choose to have her as well? There's a long pause, and Sarah just asks her mom, "Why do you think we're alive?" Okay, that's a weird question. Before the conversation goes further, Daniel shows back up with some muffins. Just then, Sam walks out from Margaret's room after putting her to sleep and says he's waiting until Maggie leaves. Sarah understands that her parents have some stuff to work out, but Margaret's her daughter and she wants her to meet her grandma. Surprisingly, Maggie chimes in saying maybe she shouldn't. It's not okay for her to just come back and expect everything to be okay. So she says that she's gonna go, but first she needs to tell them something, including Sam. He mentions a message that they all heard and wonders if it was really Maggie. She says she'll get to that, but first she needs to tell them what she found. The answers to everything. What really happened to the world. So it looks like we don't have to worry. It's not just going to skip over the past from here. We're going to go back and find out what happened to Maggie and the rest of the crew after Charlie's death. I am curious what Sam was referencing though. What message did they all hear and why did it sound like Maggie? Episode 93. Burned. Maggie runs through Catford, stopping for a moment to cry before contacting Horace and the others on the radio to inform them that Charlie is dead. She says that they also know about the train, so if anyone's hearing her, run. It then says day 2, I guess meaning the second day in Catford. Tim and Nicole are bored on the train and try to entertain themselves. At the same time, Horace waits anxiously by the radio, having heard nothing from the others, when finally the radio buzzes and Ormel checks in with them. He says that him and Pleasehold are fine and that they recently checked in with Maggie and Charlie and that they're fine as well. Suddenly we can hear Pleasehold yell, saying please hold as usual. Ormel translates that the kid said it's hot, but Horace seems suspicious. Suddenly Judy comes in on the radio and says that Horace is breaking up, insisting that he go outside the train. However, he walks over to his bag and pulls out a pistol instead. Judy continues asking him to go outside and Horace calls Tim and Nicole in, giving them a hand signal. He then speaks to the radio saying, sorry, but you'll need to try harder to pull one over on this old dog. He doesn't know how the person on the radio is using their voices, but there's no way it's Judy or Ormel on the other side. Finally, the voice asks what gave it away, and Horace says it was the kid. Pleasehold didn't say it was hot. He said that they're burned. Suddenly, a dozen laser dots start appearing all over Horace and the train. Episode 94, Thud. Bullets rain into the train cabin and Nicole takes one to the arm. We then get a look at the culprits. Several drones are hovering outside of the train with attached guns. Horace hands Tim a pistol, and Tim says that he doesn't think he can hit the drones from here. But Horace tells him it's not for the drones. He plans on trying to shoot down as many as he can, but if he dies, he tells Tim not to get captured. Instead, they should use the gun on themselves. Nicole grabs the gun and says screw that, she's gonna go out fighting. As they discuss it, they suddenly hear a series of loud thuds making their way through the train. They make a new plan. Nicole can keep an eye inside the train and shoot whoever or whatever is coming toward them. Meanwhile, Horace stands up and takes some shots at the drones outside. Tim is clearly in a panic, but Nicole tries to tell it to him straight. Horace is the most valuable part of their team. He's the only one who can save the world. Tim realizes she's right, and the two know what they have to do. He says it sounds stupid, but he really wanted to find out what was going on. It feels like they were so close to answers. At the same time, Horace is firing like a maniac, yelling that this isn't the first time he's shot down government drones. He turns over and finds that Tim and Nicole have exited to the next cab to face whatever's coming through the train. They tell him good luck and walk away. Ahead, they hear a massive guttural yell like from a beast. Tim wonders what the hell it was, and Nicole just sighs and says, probably something weird and up. Well, that's a pretty good guess. They say they love each other, and finally the door opens at the other end of the cab. In the dark, we can only see large red eyes peering in and hear strange growling noises. Suddenly, several more red eyes appear. We don't get to see exactly what it is, but Tim and Nicole are shocked, trying to make sense of it. Then, in a badass last stand, they get ready to fight in vain as the episode ends. Episode 95, Hang in There. In her chef garb, Maggie places the final touches on a fancy-looking scallop dish. Judy then says that she has a call from Sarah, and when she looks down, the dish has transformed into some strange lava ball. Okay, it's clear now that this is a dream or something. She looks at several other dishes that are all just as weird, like a plate with blood splats on it, or one that's got octopus tentacles in the shape of a heart. Finally, the waiter shows up and apologizes for letting her down. We can't see his face, but it seems to be Charlie. Judy chimes in again, saying that now Sam is on the phone. He says she's a bad mom and a coward, and wishes he never met her. He says all her new friends are gonna die in pain screaming, and it's all her fault. Maggie looks down again, and now the plate has a dish that you can interpret how you like, but it reminds me of Charlie's head sliced in half. In reality, Maggie wakes up from the awful nightmare hiding inside a hat store. It's now day 3 in Catford. She cocks her pistol and starts to head out, but before leaving she leaves a note in case the others find it. In the note, she apologizes that she wasn't stronger and that she let everyone down. She says that she searched all day and couldn't find anyone else. Since the town doesn't have running water, she plans on searching for some at the supply store and then head back to the train after that. In case it ever makes it back to him, she also tells Sam that she's sorry and that she loves him, and to tell Sarah she loves her too. She enters the supply store and searches for food and water when outside we can see someone watching the store with jagged cat ears on their mask. Episode 96, Super Void. Maggie makes her way through the store gathering supplies when suddenly a figure appears behind her. She turns to see a pretty horrifying character, a woman with a messed up cat mask that looks like a scarecrow or something, and she's wielding 2 bloody machetes. It's straight out of a slasher film. They stare at each other for a moment, and Maggie finally says that she's not afraid of the woman. The woman just cocks her head, and strangely, Charlie's voice comes out and starts to ask the famous question of, do you like trains? Then suddenly he just says, you sickos, and warns Maggie that if she hears this to run. There's some gory sounding noises and he screams in pain. I guess this is a recording or something? Well, Maggie doesn't wait around to ask questions and just says fuck you, firing a shot at the woman. Then in a sequence fit for the Matrix, the woman dodges the gunshots while running at Maggie. It seems she's got nearly superhuman agility. She takes a swing at Maggie with her machete and slices off her fingers. Oh my god, this season is off to a crazy start. Maggie sits on the floor cursing while her hand bleeds profusely and her attacker is looking down at her. She simply asks the woman why she's doing this and who she is. Instead of using her own voice, the woman answers in Maggie's, stating that her name is Maggie of neighborhood 147D. She's thankful for her husband, her loved ones, and the government that protects and feeds us. She's the happiest she's ever been. If you remember correctly, this is the weird prayer/declaration thing that Maggie said way back in season 1. Man, season 1 feels like it might as well be 100 100 years ago. Speaking of which, there is an insane callback here. When the lady is dodging the gunshots, she says, "Whoops," and someone made the connection that this is actually from way back when Maggie threw the mug on the ground in season 1. Also, there's a little message at the end of this episode by Mike Burchell that reads, "Did I color code thousands of speech bubbles to individual characters just for this relatively small payoff? Only a psycho would do that." Now, I know he said before that he does have the general plot all mapped out for the rest of this series, so I'm thinking he did do this and is in fact a psychopath. Episode 97, Toxoplasmosis. Maggie reaches for her dropped gun and the scary masked lady swipes at her with the machete. As the menacing woman stares at her, Maggie has a flashback to when she left Sam that day, presumably regretting it now. She then kicks the lady in her ankle, knocking her on her back, and takes the opportunity to run like hell. She starts running to the front of the store when she sees a creepy figure standing outside the front doors. It's only a silhouette, but whoever it is doesn't seem to be wearing a cat mask. Instead, they have a weird gourd-shaped head and a red glowing eye. Maggie literally nopes out and turns around, running out of the back exit. She falls to the ground and looks up to see two more figures standing in front of her, but this time it's Judy and Ormel. After finding a place to hide, Ormel wraps up Maggie's hand and we learn that Pleasehold went missing the first night in Catford. Maggie explains what happened to Charlie and then what happened between her and the woman, as well as the strange man she saw outside. She mentions the red eye, similar to when the government warns people, but believes it to be something else. We then get a close-up of the man's actual human eye and the red dot coming from within. She goes on to explain the woman's weird ability to copy voices, guessing it to be some kind of voice synthesizer. They make a plan to get back to the train and see what happened to the others before searching for Pleasehold. When they arrive, they find bullet holes and blood all about the place, but no sign of anyone here. On top of that, whoever did this smashed up the controls on the train so they can't leave. Judy then enters the next train cabin and comes back pretty upset. She tells them that Tim and Nicole are dead. Ormel can barely believe it and wants to see for himself, but Judy tells him that they wouldn't want him to see them like this, implying that something pretty horrific happened to them. Maggie asks if there was any kind of message, like the one on Charlie's body. Judy says that there was a message. It was just 2 words. But before she can say them, someone speaks through Horace's radio. It's Pleasehold, and the words Judy probably saw were "Please hold." Episode 99. 99 million. As soon as the crew hears the kid's voice, a device strapped to the underside of the table sprays a green gas and the train doors lock. They try to hold their breath, but it's no use. The gas gets into their lungs and they all pass out. Maggie wakes up in a daze and looks over to see Horace. That crazy son of a bitch is still alive. However, it zooms out to show that the two are restrained and hanging upside down. In a further zoom out, we also see Ormel and Judy, who are still unconscious. They seem to be inside of a large building. Maggie freaks out, asking where the hell they are, and Horace tells her to stay calm. Since they're hanging upside down, they have a higher chance of heart attack. They catch each other up on what happened, and Horace feels like everything is his fault. He says that there are only 3 of them here. He figured they'd be facing an army or something, but instead it's these freaks. He calls himself a moron, and Judy wakes up just in time to tell him to quit having a pity party. Yeah, they've suffered some casualties, but they all knew the risks when they came in, and besides, it was Judy's call, not Horace. Plus, she feels that they are finally close to getting some answers. This snaps Horace out of his funk, and he starts trying to think of a way out of this. At the same time, Ormel wakes up and freaks out for a minute before they all pause at the sound of footsteps heading their direction. The episode ends with a strange set of images, a cat head entering what looks like the center of a sun and ends up looking like an eye. It goes dark and we hear a new voice speak up saying, "You're all awake, now we can begin." Episode 100, Cats. This episode starts at day 100 million. Yeah. We see a giant red cat head that seems connected to a massive sun. In a zoom in, we find the head to be a sort of spaceship. Inside, 2 people stand on a platform. They're wearing cat masks, but they don't cover their full heads, and we can see their hair poking out. They address each other as husband and wife and have a cryptic conversation. The man asks his wife, "How is she?" We don't know who this she is, but it seems like they're sick or something. Maybe it's their daughter? The husband seems pretty upset and asks why it has forsaken them. And his wife tells him that its plans are known, every step is scribed. It does not act on feeling, but simply follows the words, But before she can speak the words, her husband tells her not to say them. We only get the first few syllables, which seem to be the first part of optimistic, but who knows. The husband says that they have the power to save her, mentioning some miracles they've seen. Yet every request they've sent is met with silence. He then says he believes it hates them. He goes on a rant about what they've done, the endless fighting with the other houses, killing trillions of innocents just to prove who's the most loyal. He just doesn't care anymore. He says soon another house will take the station, and then another in an endless circle. The chosen and the fallen infinitely swapping places. This sequence ends here, and all I can say is, what the f***? This season has entered into a cosmic level I never would have imagined, and I can only speculate on what the hell they're talking about here. Who's they and what's it? But the system they talk about of the chosen and fallen and a fight to show who's the most loyal doesn't sound all that far from the systems we've seen in place in the present time. Anyway, let's get back to Maggie and the others. The voice we heard was that of the odd-shaped head from earlier, only this time we can actually see him in the light. His red mask, besides its weird shape, is also torn up in a similar fashion to the woman from earlier, except his ears are torn off and one of the human eyes is visible with that red dot in the center. He's also wearing a dress shirt, tie, and holding a briefcase. He approaches the hanging group and takes a big breath of air, saying, "They smell different than he thought." Okay, well, that's creepy. Judy just immediately says "F you" to the guy and that she's gonna cut out his tongue. The guy seems unfazed by her harsh words and even gets excited, saying he could use that. Horace yells at him asking why he brought them here and what's the point, but the man just laughs and mocks him for not knowing. He then informs them that he didn't bring them here. In fact, they came for the same reason, to find answers. And they actually did. He says they know everything now, and it's so much worse than they could imagine. With a creepy smile, he says he'll tell them the answers, but first, they're gonna answer some questions for him. His first victim is Maggie, and he asks her if she's ready to play the game. He then holds up a hammer covered in blood and green stuff. You might recognize this as the very same hammer that Maggie used to kill the cop in season 1. Episode 101, In the Bag. This episode kicks off with the man talking directly to the camera and saying, "Please do not be disturbed. We're making use of the emergency broadcast system for a special presentation. In fact, we have something you loyal, deserving citizens have been missing. A game show." He then presents his victims hanging from the ceiling, except Maggie, who's missing. The man says you can call him Father, and his lovely wife is behind the camera, who you can call Mother. He says the name of the game show is Obedience, and the camera pans over to Maggie, who's sitting with her fingerless hand on a table. A nail is partially stabbed into her hand, and in her other, she's wielding the hammer. She says, "My name is Maggie of neighborhood 147D. I feel spontaneously compelled to confess the following crimes." We can see that she's actually reading these words from cards that Please Hold is forced to hold up. And behind him is Mother, holding one of her machetes to the kid's throat. Maggie continues reading the cards, confessing to killing a police officer with this hammer and framing others for the murder. She also admits she left her husband and daughter and joined a group of rebels. She used this hand to disobey, and so she will show it obedience. She then raises the hammer and nails her own hand to the table. It's absolutely brutal. Father yells cut and asks Mother if it was too hammy, but she says it was great and to trust in his vision. It's really off-putting how casual this conversation is considering the circumstances. They start rolling again, and it's worth noting that Mother isn't actually holding a camera, implying that if this is recorded, she can do it through her glowing red eyes somehow. Father says this was actually just a warm-up, and now they'll get into round 1 of the actual game. He then explains the game's rules. Inside his briefcase are several weapons used in rebellious acts. Each round, without knowing which weapon will be next, one of the contestants will choose one of their friends, and together we'll figure out what the weapon is. The drones are floating nearby and shine spotlights on Judy and the others. Father says the first contestant is Horace and gives a bio on him and his anarchist origins, as well as a list of crimes he's committed against the government. He then asks Horace who he's going to choose out of his friends, and if he refuses, Please Hold will be killed. Holy shit. I honestly do not see a way out of this one. Episode 102, and the bag is on fire. Well, the spotlight's on Horace as he makes an impossible decision between which one of his friends will be tortured or killed. He finally gives an answer. himself. Father mocks him, saying, "Wow, you found a loophole. Only the smartest man alive could come up with that." He then reminds Horace that they're in charge here and has his wife start counting down. While she does, Judy, Ormel, and Maggie all try to convince Horace to choose them. Judy makes the most compelling case, telling them she's ready and has been for a long time, so reluctantly, Horace chooses her. Judy tells the rest of them to keep up the fight and then turns to the camera and starts yelling, "F the police and f the government." She continues into an epic speech about how resistance isn't just one person, a movement, or even an idea. Resistance is inevitability of the soul. Just as she finishes, Judy is struck with an arrow through the head. Holy hell, I didn't think they'd actually do it. Judy is dead. Horace freaks out, cussing up a storm. Father just talks about how cool it was, even though he didn't actually mean to shoot her in the head, and complains that now she can't make her pick. Either way, he moves on to round 2 and makes a note to his wife to cut out all of that revolution stuff for the live broadcast. The next contestant is Maggie, who must choose between Horace, Ormel, or Pleasehold. She pleads with Father to just let them all go, saying she'll do anything. He seems actually disappointed at her groveling and tells her he's gonna need an answer. As the countdown begins, Ormel and Horace try to convince Maggie to choose them, and we actually learn that Horace is 67 years old, which I don't think we knew before. Suddenly, a loud and horrific groaning noise echoes through the building, and Father says, "Oh, well, I guess we won't need the next weapon. You've done it now, folks. You woke up the baby." Episode 103. Volunteers. This episode starts off in a completely different setting. A man and woman with cat heads walk through the snow. It seems that this is their first mission together. We come in halfway through a conversation, but the man in the red mask says that his wife and child died. The woman wearing a yellow mask says that she was never married and actually volunteered when shit went down to try to save her parents. This is actually an interesting insight because it might explain why many young people, like Sarah, ended up joining the new government. The conversation is interrupted when they spot someone outside a cabin deep in the woods. It's worth noting that this seems to be a regular human without a mask, though their head is covered with speech bubbles. They spy on the person for a bit, and an all too familiar red dot appears in the eye of the man with the red cat head. We then see from his perspective heat signatures glowing through the cabin. It seems that he's using a drone and can somehow connect to it with his eye. He tells the woman to use her new voice trick and her eyes go red. She then uses the voice of the man collecting firewood to call out to the people in the cabin. Yep, if you hadn't pieced it together, it's pretty clear that this is mother and father once upon a time. I guess they got their abilities after joining up with the new government. But what the hell happened to them? We see one of the men come outside to look at his friend, and he's immediately shot through the head by a sniper, followed by his other friend in the cabin. After complimenting Mother on her accuracy, Father calls in his superior named Captain Tab and informs her that their mission is complete. She tells them that they'll be permanent partners from now on, and also that they need to come into the lab tomorrow to see something. The next day, they head to the lab and peek through a glass window at something. Father asks, "How old is he?" referring to who's inside, and a lady in the lab, not sure if it's a scientist or Captain Tab, says that it's a tough question to answer. Technically, the subject is 17, but physically, they're a 29-year-old bodybuilder due to all the hormones they've injected them with. The subject is super aggressive and gets stressed easily. The woman says that the kid actually volunteered for this, and we see the silhouette of something huge in the cell, which is surrounded by children's toys. She then asks them if they're ready for this. It now cuts back to the present, and the loud groan from before rings out, followed by thunderous footsteps until finally the monster is revealed. It's a massive man with a strange cat head that has 6 eyes. He's covered in blood and holding hatchets, as well as wearing a pair of white overalls that look exactly like Pleasehold's. The beast even says the words, "Please." So, was Pleasehold a candidate for the same operation? Episode 104, The Chestnut Tree. Everyone's just like, what the actual f***, including Pleasehold. Father greets the giant kid and tells him it's playtime as soon as Maggie picks the victim. Mother starts her countdown again, and Maggie is in complete distress. Ormel tells her she knows the right choice. Horace is the only one who could save the world. He's always felt like he had nothing to bring to the table, and this is the real reason why he's here. This is how he matters. Maggie says she's so sorry, and honoring his sacrifice, she picks Ormel. Horace begs her to say his name instead, not wanting to watch another friend die. Father tells Baby Baby to go attack Ormel using only his fists. Pleasehold is really upset. Remember, Ormel was the one who first learned to understand Pleasehold, and as his death approaches, he tells the kid it's gonna be okay and that it's not their fault. He says if they manage to make it out of this, not to be bitter or vengeful, but instead live a free life. Baby walks up to Ormel and raises his huge fists in the air when suddenly, Ormel's rope is cut and he falls to the ground. To everyone's surprise, someone is standing up above. It's Cass, the girl from the rooftops with her ears torn off, and she's got a bow and arrow. Father actually recognizes her because you may remember that there were drones flying around the rooftops, and now we know who they belong to. He commands Baby to attack her, but Cass says that's not his name. In fact, he's her big brother, and his name is Toby. Episode 105, Demons. Cass tries to talk to Toby and get him to remember her, but in the meantime, Father pulls out a shotgun and fires at her. Cass jumps out of the way, and soon Horace and Judy, well, Judy's body, are cut loose. Some arrows fly out and take down the drones, and for the first time, Father looks a little worried, ordering Baby to come back and regroup. Next thing you know, he's shot in the hand and drops the shotgun. This surprises Mother, and Pleasehold uses the distraction to stomp her foot and get loose. Horace and Ormel slowly work their way out of the ropes, and Maggie has to brutally pull the nail from her hand using the hammer. Jeez. Baby, or Toby, looks stunned all of a sudden, and we find out why when Pleasehold climbs up his back wielding one of his axes and attempts to kill him. Cass cries out and shoots an arrow at the kid to save her brother. Pleasehold dodges it, and as they fall backward, Toby catches them by the foot and throws them through the town hall windows. Toby follows after to finish the job, but he's stopped by Cass, who begs him to stop. She doesn't know what they did to him, but she knows he's still in there. She reminds him about the hill they used to ride bikes down, the cartoons they watched, and how she kicked his ass at Smash Bros. Toby actually starts to speak, almost making out the name Cass. It seems like she's getting through to him, and she tells him he can stop and they can leave together. However, a loud thunk sounds nearby, and Toby looks back to see Pleasehold wielding the massive axe. It looks like we're about to get one hell of a battle. Well, I hate to say it, folks, but that's the first half of Season 4. Honestly, I was shocked at how crazy this season got so fast. It feels like we're so close to getting the whole story, but at the same time, there's so many more mysteries now. Like, what was up with the weird tribe at the beginning? What about that weird cat head spaceship in the future? And what the hell happened to Mother and Father to make them this way? As always, I really want to hear your theories in the comments below. There are actually 5 more episodes available right now on Webtoons, so if you want to see what happens next, head over there. Once the entire season is over and all the episodes are available for free, I'll finish up Season 4, but it'll probably be a couple of months until that happens, so please have some patience. Also, if you like this series as much as I do, please go join Mike Birchel's Patreon at patreon.com/MikeBComics. As I said, he's been doing a director's commentary on all of the episodes so far. It's chock full of behind the scenes info, so go check it out. Shout out to Kill Me Katie, as always, for the intro and outro music, which is likely playing right now. And if you want to see your art at the end of my videos, email me a submission to the address below with a name or social media handle. But I appreciate you guys watching at all. This is Grief speaking. Goodbye, friends.